All right. All right. Welcome to Friday Morning Book Group, everyone. So today we are discussing Passing by Nella Larsen. A very thin book, but a book that could be discussed in my mind for hours. And a very timely book, even though it was written in 1929. I felt that this book resonated so much so today. And every day since 1929, for sure. Um, so we will discuss the book, and since so many of you have seen the movie, we will discuss the book and the movie. I hope that will be a lot of fun. So, Passing, I assume it's a small book. I assume you've all read it, but always no problem if you haven't read it or if you've read part of it. As always, you're always welcome to the group. So Passing is a semi-autobiographical novella. It's a book of identity and belonging. It was published in 1929, written by Nella Larsen. And it is as relevant today as it was then. So like today, there were no restrictive signs in the hotel when Claire and Irene meet that very hot summer day in Chicago. And they meet for the first time since childhood. But unlike today, the restrictions were basically unspoken. They were an unspoken given. They were not welcome at that hotel. And the reason they were not welcome is because they were women of color. And the story hinges on that. It hinges on appearances, racial appearances, cultural appearances, societal appearances. And so both Claire and Irene are both passing. They're passing for white. But Irene rationalizes her life while Claire kind of definitely flaunts her passing. And she dares the world to say to her, "Who are you?" And so Larsen herself was a woman of color who was very, very light-skinned, and she was a major figure of the Harlem Renaissance. She was light enough to pass, and she married white in order to better herself in society. And as a white woman, she was able to publish Passing, another novel called Quicksand, and another small novel, but after the truth about her race came out, because she was of mixed racial ancestry, she was denied publication of her other works back then. And her ancestry is that, well, she was born in 1891. She died in 1964. And she was half Danish. Her mother was from Denmark. Her father was from the West Indies. And they settled in Chicago. And she was, and when she got older, she enrolled at the Lincoln School for Nurses in the Bronx. Which was founded to recruit Black women into the field of nursing. She graduated with a registered nurse's degree in 1915. She was hired as a superintendent of nurses at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. She met her husband, Elmer Imes, who was the second African-American to receive PhD in physics, but yeah, I'm confused now because he was African-American, so I think she must have married someone else who was not African-American, because
no, she's only married once.
She only married once, so I am confused about my notes. I'm sorry. But he was not white. He was African-American. He was the second African-American to receive a PhD in physics. She married him in 1919. And they were very active in the Harlem Renaissance. And They were connected with people like W.E.B. Du Bois and Langston Hughes. And interestingly, she was a volunteer preparing the New York Public Library's first exhibition of African-American artists. And later she enrolled in the library's teaching program. She eventually became its first Black female graduate. Interesting. She divorced in 1933 and she died in 1964 at age 72. So kind of a sad ending. She kind of disappeared. So anyway, I'd like to open the discussion up to you guys. And as always, just raise your hand, and if you have something to say, you don't have to speak. But I'd love to hear your comments. Is that a hand, Tom?
Yeah,
Oh.
just full. I both saw the movie and read the book, and I saw the movie before I read the book. I thought the book was pretty good, and I enjoyed the writing. I have a question that maybe somebody in the group can answer. Is there was an intermediate person that she introduced in the middle? I think her name was Gertrude.
Yes.
Yes.
Who was passing, except both parties knew that they were passing. And I don't think that was in the movie. I don't remember it being in the movie. And it's a shame that that the author didn't bring that relationship forward as a contrast to the other two. Just
in the book she did, I thought, pretty clearly. There were the three women who were sort of passing, although Gertrude and the main character, whatever her name was, Irene, were not passing, but they could pass. And Claire obviously was passing. That was a horrific scene, actually.
Yeah. The contrast between, I would have liked if it was brought forward, or if it was brought forward, I completely missed it. And I reread rather, the last chapter. The movie is a little more ambiguous than the book as to who did it, or if anybody did it. Did you think so?
I think the ending of the book was the same. It was ambiguous, but in today's, the police, they would have been able to solve it with today's police work.
Yeah, the police don't look very closely when it's a Black person that's dead.
Yeah.
Especially in 1929.
Yeah.
But she didn't look Black, but
yeah.
But it was in a Black neighborhood.
So
Yeah.
I reread the ending, and it was, at least to me, it was apparent that Irene gave her a little push.
Well, she wanted her dead. But
yeah.
There was part in the book where it said, "I wish she would die." So it is ambiguous. It's for you to figure out or to surmise.
I thought it was a very ambiguous ending, although her Irene's kind of amnesia about it was sort of telling.
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be that way.
Yeah.
I'd like to read the end of Emily Bernard's introduction. So she says, after all, when a fire goes out, one does not necessarily remember the ashes, but one certainly remembers the brilliance of the flame.
Yeah.
So I think it was intentional.
It was. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
You don't think John had anything to do with it?
Excuse me?
Who?
John.
The husband?
The husband?
Yeah.
Well, he approached her, and maybe she backed up.
I thought possibly that it was an accident, that she backed up to the window
Right.
when he was being aggressive and she fell out.
Yeah.
And it also might have been, she was at a point where she was really uncomfortable about her identity, and especially, the husband saying, "What? You're a nigger," and she might have committed suicide. I thought was another possibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was,
I agree.
I had to read the ending twice and I still couldn't
Yeah, I
figure
did
out what
too.
had happened.
When I
I
saw,
think that-
when I saw the movie, I thought she maybe jumped.
yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. So now I didn't see the movie, but I think there are a lot of possible scenarios. My personal thought was suicide, but it could have been anything. And I think it was intentionally left open like that
Yeah.
for the audience, for the reader.
Yeah,
And I'd like to
Mhm.
see the movie to see that take on it too.
yeah. I thought the movie was clearly ambiguous.
Okay. Okay.
There's
Then
something, is that
I
a
think
word?
that's,
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
But when
all
rereading
right.
the book and Irene's thoughts to herself, I thought indicated that she did give her a little push.
Okay.
That's just how I read it, though.
Okay. All right.
Well, she clearly had her hand on her arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Anything else, Tom?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Eve.
I don't know how many people, I didn't really get, I watched the movie first, which I don't really like to do, but it just kind of happened that way. And I didn't get as strong a sense in the movie that Irene was that threatened by Claire in her marriage, so that she would have pushed her. In the book, it was much clearer, but I didn't really get that sense from the movie that Irene would have done it because she was afraid that Brian and Claire were going to have, were having an affair or, could have one. I just didn't get that sense from the movie as much as from the book. So when I read, the ending in the book, I felt much more that Irene could have pushed her because she was so upset that Claire was going to have, go off with Brian.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Eve. Anne.
I like the book very much, but I did not like either one of those women. They were manipulative, and I just didn't care for the characters. They just weren't real. Well, they were real, but they were. It's got to be a terrible burden to hide a drop of black blood. I mean, she did not have a lot, because it was her grandfather who had an affair with a black woman. So she was only like one quarter.
I thought it was
Claire.
her father.
No, her father was half. The grandfather had an affair with a black woman, so her father was half black. So she, although we don't know about her mother, we don't know what she was.
I think at that time, any drop of
Oh yes,
black
absolutely.
blood, it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter. And what the author experienced in her real life was what she was putting into writing. Basically, the discrimination that these people endured.
But she grew up with the white father, a white stepfather. So she grew up in a white environment. She had a half sister who was white, and her father was only in her life for 2 years, and then he disappeared. And her mother married a white man.
Yeah.
Who are you talking about?
Irene. Irene's mother was Danish. Her father was Danish.
No, the
No,
author,
I think that's
maybe.
Claire.
I'm not talking. Oh, that's right, the author.
You're talking about Nella.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about the author.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well,
She
her
grew
father,
up in a white household.
her father was from the Danish West Indies. Her mother
Right.
was from Denmark. Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
But then her mother remarried, and that father adopted her.
Yeah. So,
All right.
yeah. I mean, will you finish, Anne, what you're saying?
We don't know. The issue is we don't know who Claire's mother was. that was not in the, it said in the book, they don't know. Her father was, what was her father, half black? I don't
No,
remember.
I think the father was white.
The father was white.
That's right.
Father was white and the mother was black.
I
Okay.
think that's what they said too. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why the father never made it beyond being a janitor or something. I mean, that sort of held him back. That's the impression I got from the early part of the book.
Even though he had a college education.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then when he died, she lived with her white aunts.
Yeah.
Right.
And they did that out of duty. They didn't really love her. She didn't have any love. And I think that speaks to the layers of the book. So it's about this, you know, this passing, this black, white, this discrimination. And it's also the layers of, you know, where do I belong? And Claire, she really didn't have any morals, you know. She flaunted herself. She was a woman of the new century. She really was. She was like the flappers, you know. She wanted everything. She wanted all material goods. She didn't really care about getting a better life for Black people in society. She just wanted a better life for herself. She wanted material goods. But in the end run, she wanted to hear, and I wrote this down, she wanted to see Negroes, to be seen with Negroes, to talk with them, to hear them laugh. She wanted to be with her people. And this was her roots. She missed that. She missed that camaraderie. And in the end run, when you strip everything else away, all the glamour, all the beautiful clothes, all the makeup, all the parties, that's what she came down to. She missed her people. So there's a lot of layers to this book that we can talk about. And
she was never accepted in school.
She was never accepted in anything. She was never, which is when she married this rich white man, she felt like, oh, wow, this is the ultimate. But she was never still accepted as a human being, really. And she thought getting all this stuff, material stuff, and being part of this ultra rich society, her husband was a very rich man. He was a banker, I believe. This would make her feel I've made it, but it really didn't, which is why it also leads me to think that it probably was suicide, because she never felt satisfied. She never felt loved. And she gravitated to Irene because I think she was looking for this kind of sustenance, which she never got. She was kind of begging her for this. And eventually, I mean, she had the affair. I mean, that was kind of, you know, we knew that was going to happen, but.
But Brian said he preferred darker women. Remember that line?
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
But she was also afraid to have children. She was afraid the children would be dark.
Yeah, she was afraid of that. She was afraid.
She
of
did
that.
have
And her
one.
husband was
She
a
had one
racist.
child.
Let-
She had a daughter.
Yeah. Yes, but she wouldn't have any more.
That was a real eye opener. That one, fear of having kids, that they would be revealed.
Let's give Tanya a turn. I see her hand up.
Okay.
Okay. So I enjoyed reading the book, but how ironic that she marries a racist, and then she also expects a child, right? And the fear of pregnancy and thinking of that she'll have a black child, that impressed me too. Not only that, but I recently read a very interesting book also about like passing. It was The Private Librarian, which was excellent.
The personal librarian.
The personal librarian, Tanya?
Yeah. That was similar, that she also passed as a white, but she was a genius and all that. It was a very interesting book. So I kind of compared how it feels to be passing as a different race. it's kind of strange because, I mean, you live with the fear that somebody will find out and you'll be in trouble. So, but as far as that goes, the ending was a little upsetting because, of course, we all know what happened. But I did enjoy the book.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. You know, Tanya, the personal librarian, is on my list of books to do with the group, but it's so popular. I can't get enough copies.
Excellent, excellent.
So I'll have
Very
to
well
wait.
written.
Has anyone else read it? Oh, Pam. Yeah,
Strongly recommend it.
I'll wait.
we-
I have to wait.
Did we read The Vanishing Half?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. It's very much a partner to this book. It's
Yes.
a current day book about passing they're twins and one passes. Excellent book.
Yes, I read that.
I
Yeah.
read that.
Yeah.
I was going to mention it when I spoke, but
Okay.
you should think about doing that for the group. I think there's lots to talk about in it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Tanya. Patricia.
I have 3 dogs. They are barking, so I'm sorry if there is some noise. They are looking at
No.
anything out of control.
We're
What
good.
impressed me most in this book is that I'm not wearing her shoes, Claire's shoes. So looking from outside, she's a woman meant to be unhappy because she could not give up one world. So if she was in the white world, she would miss her roots. If she was with her roots, she would miss money and being accepted by society. So it doesn't matter what she does in her whole life, she would be unhappy. So it's scary because we don't know the routes that the path that we're going in our lives. So if I look outside from my life, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, that makes me think, what are the things that we need to give up in order to be happy with the things that you have now and not thinking about the thing that you don't have it. And I think her life was all the time thinking about something that she didn't have by the time that she was living that specific path. So that made me think a lot. I'm from Brazil. I'm here for 1 month, a bit more than 1 month.
Oh.
And so I gave up a lot of things in my country, and I'm here with my twins. I have 4 children. So that made me think that we need to focus on what we have now. Of course, that we're not going to forget our root and everything, our past, and the things that we need to give up in order to live now. But it's kind of scaring to be always looking at something that you don't have it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's kind of like mindfulness, you know, concentrate on the moment and make the most of what you have. And I kind of agree. I'm so sorry you're only going to be here for a month. Oh.
No, I'm here for a month, but I'm gonna live here. I married an American, so I moved from Brazil to here, but we got here on January 4th.
Oh, but you're gonna stay here.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh,
live.
great. Okay.
Okay, you can stay.
I'm very happy to hear that.
So I'm sorry about my English. I'm gonna improve, I promise.
Your English
It's
is
fine.
perfectly fine. We welcome you and we're glad you're here. Thank you. Anything else, Patricia?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate it. Okay, how about Pam?
I agree with you that there are layers and layers of this book you could just talk about forever. So one thing, brief thing, I did not read the back of the book before I read it. And I knew it was about passing, but it was only when I got to the Chicago scenes that I figured out who was passing. So, which was, looking back is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because the back says it was Claire, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
It was confusing.
It was confusing, and to me it was surprising. I was waiting. Which one? I thought they were it was confusing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think the narrator, I mean, it's a third person narrator, but it's really the perspective of Irene. And I saw her as an unreliable narrator. I mean, she's so manipulative and controlling. And I think it was Anne who said you didn't like either character. I sort of didn't like either, but as well. But particularly Irene's sort of control of her husband, and what a scene that really stuck with me was the one at the dinner table where Brian, they're talking about teaching the boys about, you know, what it means to be a Black person today. And she just wanted to have nothing to do with it. And then we find out that Brian wanted to leave the United States because of racial treatment. And I just found that whole thing fascinating.
Yes.
And so contemporary in that it's such an issue in the, you know, that we hear about a lot.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I wanted to mention was about everyone was living a lie in this book. Certainly Claire, totally her whole life was a lie, but also Irene in how she was trying to kind of control the situation to her ideal of how she wanted to live and how she wanted her family to live. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. Irene had a not a very honest life either. She certainly, yeah.
And I was going to bring up the Vanishing Half with that, but somebody already did. But I think these two books are such a good pair. So
yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Richard, I think I saw your hand.
When I thought the movie, I guess the big difference between the movie and the book you're just reading, it's more verbal. When you're seeing the movie, you're seeing more verbal things. It's more evident when you see people's reactions, the actions that take place. So to me in the movie, I thought the affair between, maybe because I saw it after the book, between Bill and Claire was more vivid, more noticeable than it was in the book. Maybe when I was reading the book, it seemed less obvious to me, the affair. I didn't pick up on it. I don't know what, I didn't have a great feeling about Bill in the book.
Brian, you mean?
Brian, I'm sorry, Brian. I think it was just a control issue between both of them. I guess I didn't like him because he pursued Claire, or maybe that was it. But it seemed like whatever reason, Irene also, as Pam was, she was just a very unhappy person. I mean, she seemed very jealous about the fact that Brian, according to her, had a better rapport with her two boys than she did. Looked like the boy, you know. And she also, there were many times where she just fell asleep or forgot about the kids. And Brian had to sort of pick up the slack, driving them to school and spending time with them. She sort of was not always there. Was it common back then, I guess, for Black people like them to have servants?
Well, I think that they lived in a very rarefied class of Black people up in Harlem at that time. So, you know, one of my notes is, one of my notes is like, class is the great equalizer, you know, not so much race, but class. And they were in a very upper class Black society at that time in the 20s. You know, rubbing elbows with W.E.B. Du Bois and such intellectuals like that. So, Yeah, I mean, yes, they did. They said,
I don't think she drove a car. So
I
he had to drive the kids to
doubt
school.
it. I doubt she did. Yeah, back
So
in
that's
the
why he drove the kids to school.
Yeah, I mean, remember that this is the beginning of the 20th century. Women were just becoming, they were just coming out of the Victorian age. You know, the 20th century. It was in the beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
You know, women were shortening their skirts. They were putting on makeup. They were dressing differently. Everything was changing. Everything.
But you certainly wouldn't have two cars in the middle of the city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's why he drove it, because he drove her to a place where she took the errand, did her errands, and then took the bus.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of women, especially in New York, people didn't have cars.
Right.
You didn't need a car.
No.
You know,
No,
we didn't.
Cars were much harder to drive back then.
Yeah.
Much harder to drive. They required a lot of muscle and a lot of knowledge, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, you couldn't just put it
oh,
to drive.
come
and go.
on.
I disagree.
I'm not saying that women couldn't. I'm just saying that it was a lot more strenuous than it is now.
My
I don't think that was it.
my mother was the first one to buy a car, and she taught my father to drive. And this
All
was
right,
back
Irene.
probably in the end of the 20s, beginning of the 30s.
Oh, Irene. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all right.
It's easy parking because not so many people had cars. You still had the horses around.
That's true. That's
My mother was born in 1905, so.
I don't think driving's a picnic now either. with all the-
That's true.
Yeah,
I
for
don't
different
know.
reasons.
I mean, I know I grew up in New York, and a lot of people didn't have cars because we had the subway and the buses. But if you had, maybe back then when they didn't have a lot of cars, and I don't know, I'm not sure, but yeah.
I just wanted to add, I don't ever remember reading a book where one character with 3 appearances, I'm referring to John, had such an impact on the book. You know, the first one in section 2 where he calls his wife that Nig statement and saying that he hates blacks. The second part where Irene and Claire see him, but Irene is almost ready to tell John that, well, your wife is not really white, she's black, but she doesn't. And then the third part at the end where she calls.
Irene wasn't with Claire when they met. She was with another friend.
Right.
Yeah, she was with Felice, who looked black.
Right.
And that's when
Right.
he realized that
Yes. Yep.
something
okay.
was, yeah.
Oh,
And
And then he showed up in her house.
at Felice's house, yeah,
Yes.
where the party was.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he went to Irene's house first, and maid probably told him where they were.
I thought Felice was white.
No,
I don't
No.
think so.
I thought there was
Yeah.
another woman she was with
Yeah.
who was black when they ran into John.
I was curious what other people
I'm pretty
thought
sure it
of
was Felice.
Brian. What did other people like Brian or dislike Brian? Or
Nah.
Like about Brian.
I actually liked his
I did
humor,
I didn't like
sarcastic humor.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
he was treating black people, right? Even though he was white. He was a
Brian?
doctor.
Brian?
No, he
Brian
was
was-
black.
Brian was black.
Brian was black.
He was dark. I mean,
That
they-
was
I think
Brian
they
was
talked-
Irene's husband. He was black.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He was
Well,
definitely
he-
black.
He knew that she was black.
Yeah.
Even when she was past, even though she was light skinned.
Yeah.
well, he read the
When she
letter.
married him, she told him that she was part black.
Yes. He knew.
Yes,
He knew.
No?
yes.
He knew.
He knew.
Yes.
I
So
think
I
it was also
assumed he was white. That was a wrong assumption.
He was black. Hey,
Okay.
So let's see. Who has not spoken? Joanna, did you want to speak?
I did. I had a question in the book. Irene was referring to this big secret. I don't know what secret it was that they shouldn't find out. She said, It didn't matter if no one knew. Everything could go on as before if the boys were safe. Page 97 of the book. I don't know what secret Irene had.
Let me see, page 97.
Yeah, at the end of 97, she talked about a secret.
Who is she talking to?
Well, she's
Claire.
talking to
Husband.
Claire.
Oh, Claire. Oh, right,
Yeah.
Claire.
No, I thought it was Irene that had the secret. That was Claire talking?
Well, she was with Claire. I don't know.
If the boys were safe, I thought it was Irene talking because I didn't get that. If the boys were safe, her kids were safe. Everything could go on as before if the boys were safe. If no one knew. I didn't know what secret she was talking about.
I'm honestly.
Secret is about Brian and Claire.
Unless, okay, maybe it's the wrong character, but what if the boys were safe? Whose boys?
I think her boys, her
boys.
children.
Well, that's why I thought it was Irene talking.
It is.
I
It
didn't know.
is Irene talking.
What secret did Irene have?
That she discovered that Brian and Claire were probably having an affair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you
right.
think that's okay, because I didn't get that.
Yeah, that's it.
But it was a wonderful.
Irene is correct. I believe.
That's what it is. Okay. But it was a wonderful book. I was thinking, nobody is comfortable in their own skin,
That's
Right.
correct. Yeah, you're right.
literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And also I think it's interesting, the question of if one Black person can tell, that came up, you can tell that someone's Black. If one can recognize, somebody of the same background or race. I think it's very interesting, that idea, if you can tell. And, the idea of passing too, it's like Irene was involved with the Negro League and improving the lives of Blacks, and yet it's sort of a hypocrisy, the idea of you're working to improve the lives of Blacks, so there's some pride, you want to improve their lot, and yet people trying to pass and having shame for being Black. It's very, that whole idea, that's why this is wonderful discussion, because there's a lot to it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're
Yep, you hit
in
it.
or you're out. Where are you? And it's that sense of, needing to know, where do I belong? Where do I belong? And the sense of, morals and who am I trying to better? The society as a whole, myself, my children, my family, or my whole Black community. I mean, with Claire, she didn't care about anybody but herself. That's all she cared about. Irene made a pretense of caring about others. Did she really? I don't know. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. We don't know. We don't really know. But it's a lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion questions here, and that's why I chose the book. So a lot to think about. I encourage everyone, if you haven't read The Introduction by Emily Bernard, who's a professor, I believe at Yale, I encourage you to read it. It's excellent. It's several pages at the beginning of the book, if you haven't read it.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's excellent. So we're getting on in time. Did anyone have anything else they would like to contribute? Sorry, Judy.
Yeah, I felt that it was really a sad story because there weren't any characters in there that were really happy with their situation.
Right.
And that, and Irene, her husband was a physician, and they were living in an upscale area in Harlem. So they had means, but that wasn't the answer. It was really more about the identity. I wanted to mention two other books. A number of years ago, I read the book, The Color of Water, and it's about
great book.
it's about a Jewish woman who marries actually several black men, and it's a white woman passing as black. And finally, I don't remember the end of the book, but she finally owns up to her sons and, you know, tells them who she is. And the other book I wanted to mention, I think it's called The Sin of Tamar, and it's about an Orthodox Jewish woman who is raped by a black man. And she's coming home from the mikveh, the ritual bath, when she's raped. And her husband is a rabbi, and she doesn't want to tell him what's happened. And she becomes pregnant, and she still doesn't tell him. And she's like really nervous, and she has the baby, and it's a white baby. So she figures, you know, I got through that. And then I don't know if any of you are going to read it, but what happens at the end is her son, who is living in Israel, his wife has a baby, and it's black. And at that point, she has to own up to what happened. So,
Wow. What's the name of the book? How do you spell the second word?
I think it's The Sin of Tamar, and it's
Tamar.
Tamar, and the author is Naomi Reagan.
Oh, I've read.
I can't remember how you spell her name. Regen or something like that.
Wow.
Interesting.
Oh,
It's
that
either
sounds
The Sin of
interesting.
Tamar or The Secret of Tamar. I can't remember. But it was a good read.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I know there's probably quite a lot of books out there that would be segues to this book. So good to consider. Thank you. So we are getting close to the 11 o'clock. Just like to mention a couple of items. One is next month, we are going to read American Baby. And the subtitle is American Baby, A Mother, a Child, and the Shadow History of Adoption. It's really a fascinating look at adoption, but it's a readable book because it focuses on a particular woman and her son in the 50s and 60s. So I think you guys will find it very interesting. I have lots of copies. Unfortunately, Richard, I don't think there are any audios. I don't think so. So you're gonna have to read it.
No.
What's that?
No. And no movies.
No movies, no. So I always look for the audio too. I like the audio, but I don't think there are any. But
Who's the author?
The author, sorry, is Gabrielle Glaser, Glaser, Gabrielle Glaser. And like I said, I have lots of copies for you. It's a I believe it's 2021 or 2022 publication. I think 2021. And then the second piece of business is that, as you know, the governor has lifted mask mandate February 28th, and we in Wellesley are lifting mask mandate beginning of March. So we hope to do in-person groups and classes and everything else that we do in April. So I'm hoping right now, if nothing changes, God knows, with variants, to do in-person book group in April. And I am limited to 15 participants, but I think we should be okay. And we will space out in the auditorium. I won't do we'll be spaced out. And we do recommend masking. It's not mandatory, but it is recommended. A show of hands, how many of you would be interested in in-person book group with masking? Okay, good. All right, great. But for March, we're still gonna have to do Zoom. So, Irene, do you have a question?
I had a question. How do we return this book since it was never checked out?
Oh, thank you for reminding me, yeah. So that book was loaned on the honor system. And if you can just bring it back to me. So just bring it back to the reference desk and tell them to give it to Deb.
Okay.
That would be great. And then
We're all honorable, so we'll do that.
I trust you guys. That's why I did this. Because my assistant director said, should we make a list of names? I said, no, they're going to bring the book back. I'm not worried about them. And then secondly, in April, I'm also going to do a book. It's a surprise. I'm not going to tell you the title, but it's a current book. And it's going to be another On Your Honor book that I'm giving out. It's a current book. So it should be fun.
So will you have the books for next month up at the reference desk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Next month it's American Baby, and April is my surprise. All right. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and stay safe, stay well, and yeah, hope for better days, huh?
Actually, the April meeting, I think, is the eve of Passover.
Oh, is it really? That Friday?
I think so.
Okay, well, I hope that doesn't eliminate anybody.
It's the 15th. Passover is the 15th. So what is the date in March that you?
Does
But
anybody
that is the first night of Passover, the 15th.
It's also Good Friday.
A Friday.
Oh, it's Good Friday? Oh, is that going to be a problem for people, Good Friday? Would that be a problem? Any show of hands, would that be a problem for anybody?
For me, it is because I have company that day. That's why I know.
Oh, would that be a problem for you, Tanya?
Yes, but you don't have to base upon me if you want to continue. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? How about this? I'll put out an email to the group and say, here's the date for April. Will this be a conflict for you? And if enough people come back and say yes, I'll change the date.
Okay.
I'll do that. Okay.
Thank you.
And if not enough people come back and say yes, then we'll leave it on the third Friday. Does anybody have the third Friday date at hand?
I think it's the 15th.
It's the 15th.
It's the 15th of April, the third Friday? Okay.
Yep.
And Passover is the
Starts that
16th.
night.
16th. And the third and 15th is Good Friday.
It's also school vacation. The schools will be closed on Good Friday, and the next week is school vacation, if that makes any difference to people.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, I'll put out an email and people can respond and let me know how they feel. And we'll go from there. But March is the third Friday. I believe it's the 18th, I think, or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, 18th.
18th. Thank you. Okay. Well, great to see everybody. Take care, and I hope to see you all soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye. Take care.
Bye.